All right, it's 5:30 and we've got quorum, so we're going to get started. I'm calling the meeting to order. We'll do roll call. If you just say your name into the mic so the minute taker can hear us.
Margaret Beck.
Nicole Villanueva.
Christina Willou Reynolds.
Kevin Boyd.
Jordan Sellergren.
Frank Wagner.
Deanna Thoman.
All right, public discussion of anything not on the agenda. If you guys are here for an agenda item, that's not now, but looks like none. All right, item D, the certificate of appropriateness. This is 804 Iowa Avenue.
And Noah Stork just arrived. Okay, 804 Iowa Avenue is in the College Hill Conservation District, as you can see here on the corner of Lucas and Iowa Avenue. The house is built, well, I guess I didn't put down the construction date, but it's a Tudor Revival style house. As you can tell, there's a brick first floor area. There's a stucco with decorative board detail above. There's highly pitched gable ends facing forward. This is that portion of the house that we were just looking at that faces south, and in 1966 there was an addition added off the side. There was an existing shed roof dormer on the west-facing side, and they extended the east-facing one into the new addition. In 2016 there was a project that reworked some of the basement and some of this, I guess there's a patio back here as well. This shows the west face, so we have the historic portion of the building again and the 1966 addition. A bulk of the project involves replacing several windows. This is pretty light, but this is facing kind of like that aerial photo. So this is the historic portion on the south side, and this is the wing, and it's been cut off to fit on the slide. They are proposing to replace the first floor windows in these locations and around here, as well as this one in the 1966 edition. And they're also proposing to replace the side lights on the front door. From the exterior, this is basically what we're looking at on the front windows. We have a double hung that is 8/1. We have 3 of them. They each have a transom that has 4 lights above. There's wood trim in between. There's happens to be brackets above that as well. On the interior, some of these photos are from today and some of these photos are from September. It's been visited twice. This is a general condition of the interior of the windows. They were originally varnished and they've been painted. Very typical sash, very typical transom as well. There are a few things that we noticed that were minor issues. First of all, we have a poor paint job. It's not sticking to the varnish, so the varnish is underneath. We could see it. The varnish in some cases was actually in pretty good condition. It looked like there might have been another paint over that. You can see a little bit right here. And the paint is just not adhering well to the varnish at all. It might not have been prepped or primed properly. It's hard to say. These windows have been all rehabbed. They've been weather stripped. What they did is they put a T-shaped channel in the jamb, and in this case here, the sill. They then cut a groove on the sash so that it would fit in that channel. This is something that's standardly done with professional window rehabbers to help increase the energy efficiency of the window. It helps stop some of the air from blowing in between the sash and the frame. In this case, there's also a weather stripping bar that is put at the meeting stiles on the window, and there's a little groove cut in the lower sash to accept that. And as you can see, there's general paint peeling on this window. This is a south-facing window. We can see the interior sill. We can also see the sill in between the storm window and the main sash. Both are in good condition. Again, this has the weather stripping here. We did notice on the south-facing windows on the west side of the front that 3 of them have a broken sash cord. We don't know if there are other broken sash cords maybe holding up the upper sashes. We didn't try all of the windows, so we don't know. All of the sash cords have been painted over. This is a general condition of one of the windows on the west-hand side. As you can see, it has a 6/1 pattern instead because the window is narrower. There's 2 of them on that side. One of the things we did notice is there is a problem with the trim in the house. The project does include replacing all of the trim. Here, this is on the east side of the front door in the south-facing windows, where you can see that the trim at the head of the window is separating from the wall. On the west-facing windows, you can also see that because of some of the dry conditions in the space, some of the trim paint has cracked where the trim meets the wall as well. This is the 1966 south-facing elevation drawn by J. Bradley Rust Architects, and this shows the oldest depiction of this property that we currently have. And so currently this would be what we would look at as the historic condition, and the 60s was historic anyway. So here you can see that the upper floors also had 4/1 double hung windows. Those were replaced prior to the formation of the Conservation District. You can see that the pair of windows above the front door were 15 light casement windows. You can see the existing pairs of windows on either side of the front door. You can see that the door, at least in this depiction, was some type of a board, more like a Tudor-style door than the current door. And you can also see that the windows, the side lights at that time, were just single pane glass. And that is not unusual for a house of this type. Here you can see now what we have. We have all of the upper floor windows have been replaced, again, prior to the formation of the district. We have these 8/1 and transoms that were shown in the drawing. We have a different door and windows at least similar to the ones that were shown in the 66 drawing. Part of the project is also to replace these single pane windows with 15 light windows. Our guidelines would not have us make a change to a property that could add a historic, a conjectural history, a fake history. If we were to find evidence of the fact that this house would have had 15 light windows on either side, then yes, that could be used as evidence to support replacing them and changing that pattern. Otherwise, in this case, because we also have the 1966 drawings that show the single pane window on either side of the door, we would consider that the existing and potentially historic condition and recommend not changing that to a 15 light window. This is the window on the back on part of the new addition. You can see here that it is also an 8/1 double hung window. I might have to go back to that west image. I don't think I put it in here again. Anyway, that window is actually right here, and currently it's just a 1/1 double hung window with wire glass in it. It is proposed to be replaced, I believe, with an 8/1 double hung window as part of the project. Since that window is not historic, the condition of the window would not need to be evaluated at all to approve replacing it. And replacing it with an 8/1 double hung window would match that historic condition of the time, at least when the addition was built. So that would be recommended to be approved. Included in the window specifications for this project was aluminum coil stock. There was no mention of its use, and so I can only conjecture that it was meant to cover some of the exterior wood trim on the house. Our guidelines are explicit in the fact that covering any siding or trim with anything is disallowed. And so that would not be something that we could approve. Now, typically in HUD projects, similar projects that use government funding, they might use aluminum coil stock to cover historic trim. Because it's a very inexpensive way to just cover that product and have it look like metal. This is an example of the house at 426 Church Street that recently went through a siding, a synthetic siding removal project. And here you can see a window and its sill and another window. And granted, these are the best photos I had of the pre-condition here, that these are covered in aluminum coil stock. And so basically what it tends to do is just cover the wood. It prevents you from needing to paint, but it also can trap moisture into the wood and again is not something that is allowed according to the guidelines. So because of that, as you might have noticed in the staff report, we have two motions. First of all, I'd like to remind everybody that we always phrase all motions in the affirmative. We are going to approve this project. Anyone who does not want to approve that project would just simply vote no. So instead of, if you had a project that you intended to say not approve, you wouldn't say, we're voting to not approve this. You would always be voting to approve it. You would just vote it down instead. So we have the recommended motion here to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project in Iowa Avenue as presented in the application. This would include the replacement of all of the windows that they mention. It would include the covering of the use of their aluminum coil stock if it's to cover trim. It would include the replacement of the side lights on either side of the door with 15 light windows, and it would also include the replacement of that one back window in the new addition. If the commission should vote that down, and there are elements of that application that you would approve, you can write have a second motion to approve other parts of the project. Staff recommends that one window in the rear portion of the newer addition is approved. And so this alternative approval includes only the replacement of that window with the window they propose, but retaining any exterior wood trim and repairing the remaining wood windows and retaining all the exterior wood trim. Today, Dave Powers and I, he's one of the housing inspectors, we both visited the property. Our recommendation to the owner is to have a painter strip the paint that's failing, and at least they could have a handyman re-rope all the windows, tighten or loosen any stops that may impede the opening of the windows. As an alternative project, they could go ahead and remove all the sashes and reglaze them, as well as the other two things. But for these windows, which are in good condition to open and shut and do the job they're supposed to do, it appears that they only need to be repainted and have their ropes fixed.
Great. So just a reminder of the order of events here. Now is the time for the commission to ask any just clarifying questions, something you just didn't understand, trying to avoid getting into any kind of discussion. We'll open the public forum for the applicant, any other members of the public. We'll close that, we'll get a motion on the table, and then we'll discuss among ourselves. So any quick kind of clarifying questions for Jessica? You can ask questions again later. It's just, sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes I'm like, I just want to make sure I am going into the other part, understanding what she just presented, so. All right, seeing none.
Jessica,
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm curious, what is 15 light?
Just the window is divided into 15 little panes. So they're 3 across and 5 down.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
And you weren't sure about the age of the building, 1920s, 30s?
Yeah, it's somewhere in there. I just forgot to put it in the
Just 'cause
staff
that's what the
report.
windows look like.
Yeah, I agree.
Any others? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off early. All right, we'll open the public forum. The applicant's welcome to speak, or the representative. They're not obligated to, but they're welcome to. We just need you to come up, and then if you wouldn't mind, there's a place to sign in your name so the minute taker can make sure that they get that right.
Hi, I'm Lynette Landseal. I am the president of the Chi Omega House Corporation. I've been on the House Corporation for 40 years. I was actually a resident of the House, lived there for 3 years, and have served the House Corporation, I feel, very well for a very long time. I am not a typical landlord. As a past member and somebody who cares deeply about this house, we definitely plan our projects and our requests very, very carefully and are careful stewards of the funds that we have available to us, which are, as we all know, dwindling at this time of everything costing more. I will point out right away that our intention is not to use aluminum coil stock. I was quite surprised when that came up. Our intention is to use the existing wood trim, not only exterior, but in the interior of the house as well, and to actually reuse the current trim, because we do like the current style that it looks like. And this whole project was actually initiated because we're doing a remodeling, replacing carpet, replacing wallpaper, painting the interior. It hasn't been done now for over 25 years, and while the house looks very nice on the interior, I'm afraid the pictures didn't quite do us justice. You picked the windows in the house that are, because they are on the side, it is hard to get paint to stick to those windows. But the house is lovely, and it's in very good condition, and we're very proud of it. And we have maintained that house really well for almost 40 years without the intervention of the Historical Society. We have re-roofed, we have restuccoed, we have repainted, we have re-landscaped, and we feel very proud of what that house looks like. We feel it's a real cornerstone over on 804. So just to first of all say we don't have any intention of using the aluminum coil stock. But we do want to improve the longevity of the house, and to improve the longevity of the house, we said if we were going to ever replace and make the house warmer and to be sustainable over a long period of time, because we are going to be doing the walls and the wallpaper and stuff, this would be the time for us to consider replacing those windows. And the windows haven't been opened, as far as I know, for over 40 years. And as I said, I've been there, and the existing storm windows have been in place for over 40 years, and let's face it, those storm windows aren't very pretty. What our intention is to actually replace those windows with energy-efficient Pella windows that have good insulated glass, with the hopes that perhaps we don't even have to use storm windows going forward, that we could actually have the windows as they are meant to be originally. But part of that has to do with what we're going to be allowed to do. If we do go ahead and have to repair the windows, well, then obviously the storm windows will remain in place because the current glass is very inefficient. If you're a glass piece that's made in 1924, which that house dates back to, you can imagine that the glass, while some would say it's beautiful, it is not energy efficient for us. And we are trying to heat an old big house with energy inefficient windows. And so that was one of the goals of this project, is to do that. And I don't know if I'm missing anything, James. James Phelps.
Thanks, Lynette. I'm James Phelps. I'm the architect that's been working with Chi Omega. I'm also the architect that did their 2016 project back then. I guess the only thing I wanted to emphasize here is that even though there's this consideration of new window, we don't want anything that doesn't look proper. So looking at, a higher end Pella was something that, it costs a little more money to do it, but we thought that the windows that are being selected are very appropriate and look and complement the building and the historic sense of it too. One thing that Robert is here from Pella, and he brought a window with him, and if it's appropriate, you all are more than welcome to see the actual windows that would be installed there. So thank you for your consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate your consideration and your care.
Thank you. Any other members of the public want to speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing. We need to get a motion on the floor so that we can discuss. Someone make a motion? You be the first one.
Wagner moves to a motion to replace windows as proposed and covering trim with aluminum coil stock. Move to approve certificate of appropriateness for the project at 804 Iowa Avenue as presented in the application.
Reynolds seconds the motion.
All right, discussion.
So it looks, can you go back to the picture of the house? So the windows that are getting replaced are just these, proposed to be replaced, are just these 6
These,
and then the 6 transoms above.
and then there's a double hung, there's 2 double hungs on this side and 2 double hungs on
And
this
they're
side.
also original.
Mhm.
Got it. And then everything up above was replaced,
Probably the 90s, I think.
okay, maybe after the tornado or no?
No,
Okay.
earlier than that.
And they're not getting replaced, proposed to replace those?
Correct.
And in replacing those, would we lose the individual panes that are up in the top, the small?
The windows that they propose to replace them with would be considered appropriate. They match the current configurations. It's just that the guidelines require that windows are deteriorated beyond repair to replace them. Historic windows are meant to have a storm window to create the energy efficiency of them.
Yeah, I think, sometimes the commission's asked to weigh in on tough calls where the guidelines are not, the project doesn't necessarily fit the guidelines, or there's some built-in flexibility, or kind of our job to kind of interpret. And this just, to me, is not one of those times at all. Our guidelines are clear that this is not allowed unless they're deteriorated. And I don't think we should approve this. On top of that, these can be repaired. We know that there's climate change issues in terms of adding these to the landfill if they would be replaced, that transportation costs of getting the new windows being produced and getting them here. These windows were built to design to be repaired permanently, and that's what the old windows were meant to do. So I think our job here is pretty straightforward and clear based on our guidelines.
I agree, and I also want to say that I think that it serves the integrity of the house to keep the historic windows in place as they are, with significant repairs as needed, but I do think that project seems perfectly manageable.
The other thing I would point out is with the storm windows that are on there now, if they're just aluminum recessed storm windows, actually, the building 1920 structure would have had flush mount storm and screen windows that you could take out in the spring and put the other storms back in the fall.
First floor.
And, that's easy. But you wouldn't even have to do that. You could replace those with, the windows themselves are not the energy hogs there. It's actually, the storms are probably not good. And you could get the new flush mount, without naming any brands, you can get flush mount storm windows that look like the original storm or screen windows that actually really do improve the R value of that.
And are some
Window.
of those made with wood?
You could be, they wouldn't have to be. They'd be, and they would, from what I can see, these look like they're just gray aluminum, where, the new ones would have been black or dark green. That's typically what the colors of window sashes would have been in the 1920s. And my experience is 1920s windows are really great.
Yeah, they look pretty good to me.
To me, too.
Other thoughts? Just, can we get the motions back up on the screen here? I think we're ready for a vote. Again, if you're voting,
We're voting on the first
you're
motion.
voting on the first motion, there's a motion on the floor. It's, the motion is moved to approve as presented, so if you don't want to approve, you vote no.
Right.
Can I just clarify? Okay, so, just being new here, so the public, the individuals who are representing, they would like to replace the windows, those windows that we just talked about. And you're saying, no, you need to fix the windows that are there.
I'm
Is that
saying,
correct?
I'm saying the guidelines say that
The guidelines say that,
the windows need to be repaired unless,
unless they're too damaged.
yeah.
Like beyond repair.
Yeah, usually it's a lot of, it's, but when we often approve windows to be replaced, it is because they're rotted 50% or more, and
Okay.
unable to be repaired.
Okay.
One more clarifying question, but they could replace the storm windows with whatever they want to without, I guess, us approving?
We don't regulate storm windows and storm doors, so they can always be replaced. They're typically the sacrificial element because they get all of the weather, and they would need repair or replacement a lot more often than the actual windows.
Okay, so potentially just fixing the current windows and replacing storm windows could kind of cover, okay.
And we don't know why that option wasn't considered. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, are we ready for a vote? All in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Anyone not voting?
I'm not.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
I'm just, yeah.
That's fine.
I guess part of me just wants more information, I think.
That's okay.
Yeah,
You
okay.
cannot vote.
Okay.
So, but that's, can you do the count? There's, how many of us?
There's 8 of you, so it's 7-0, 1 recuse.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, then we have an alternative motion.
Okay, Wagner
Seven.
moves to approve the alternate selective window replacement and window repair. A certificate of appropriateness for the project at 804 Iowa Avenue, replacing the rear window on the west elevation with the window proposed in the application, retaining exterior wood trim, and repairing the remaining wood windows, retaining exterior wood trim.
Do we have a second?
Villanueva, have a second?
Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? Okay, great.
Wait, you didn't vote again, is that right?
Aye.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
did
we
vote
have-
this
it's-
time,
it's-
okay.
Yeah. All right,
I mean, yeah, I think that would be a fine
yes.
vote. If
Okay,
that was
great.
the route, I
Yep.
think that would be a great option, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to item E, the review of the 2022 Historic Preservation Commission Work Plan.
I didn't make you any slides.
That's fine. I printed out
I
the,
have my copy as well.
so in the,
Mine.
what's that? Yeah.
I'm just going to listen.
So we, every year, have done, are required, Jessica, by the state?
Yeah, I could introduce that. So every year, we do an annual report. It's due the end of February, and so we will bring it to the commission for approval at the February meeting. We also have a requirement to create a work plan at that time, and so that is something that you will also vote on and approve.
You know, historically, the work plan has been, I would describe, very ambitious. When I first joined the commission, it was just like everybody's wish list, and it was like without much focus. A few years ago, we reworked some of our bigger priorities to align with the city's expressed goals that the city council passed in the strategic plan, hoping that it would inspire more engagement. Which is the document that was in the commission packet. I think the city has recently reworked a few of these. I think it's very, very close. But
I haven't looked at it, but I do think that they kind of altered their strategic plan a little
there's,
bit.
I think they added there was 6, they added a 7th, and they reworked one and combined a few, I think. So I will say to the long-term, you know, I'm coming on like year 7 of this commission, I think, maybe somewhere around there. When I started, we had a different head of the planning department who would allocate more staff time to historic preservation stuff, just because the historic preservation planner would get, when applications were busy, would get hours extended a little bit, and other projects could happen. We applied for grants very often and did we did additional work. With the new city manager, hired a new director of development services, essentially, I think is what
I think it's the Neighborhood Development Services. That's
the umbrella.
the
Okay.
entire group.
Thank you.
And I should clarify that I did not get more time for projects. It was more that the planner had been doing my job before I was hired for a period of time. So he did the job, and so if a special project came up that I needed more time for, he would help make it so that I had more time to do that. When he was no longer able to help, he did get an emergency extra hours for me for a period of time that was then taken away when
Yep.
staff changed to new levels.
Yep, and some of it was just the philosophy of the previous, so the city council makes policy, and a lot of what actually gets happened is made by staff choices, right? And the current director of the current city administration, not the elected folks, have decided it's not a priority and has not invested in that on their own, in the department or otherwise. I will say with one notable exception, when the home builders asked them to send out a survey. So just going to make that exception, noted. So there's been fewer and fewer things. I mean, we have, those of you who have been on the commission for a little while, remember we got a few grants that were kind of filtering in through after that. And so it's been very hard to kind of move much of this forward. The city staff, in my opinion, attempts to slow our efforts because they are, well, I'm not going to assign reasoning, but they do. That is, I think, can be noted. That said, this is the plan that we wrote a couple years ago, updated a little bit last year, and probably should update again for next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to, as chair, kind of take a look at this, update the plan that we look at the city, their updated goals, and try to kind of just rework this a little bit. And we can maybe spend some time next month figuring out if there are items that we should, as we do our work plan, maybe recommend to city council again. We've recommended a few things that they have ignored, and that we could ask them to just, hey, we'd like some direction. You have the right as a council to say no to these things, but we'd like some feedback on them.
I could say that, I tried to look at this work plan a little bit to see, what we had made progress on. I did note that there's at least one thing that we did make progress on. On the second page of the work plan under Demonstrate Leadership in Climate Action, we had a long-term goal of providing resources for energy efficiency, repair, and maintenance of older homes on the city's website. And city staff has created a webpage that provides information about like some incentives and stuff like that. Some historic preservation related, some not, that are all on one page. So that is one thing that came as a direct response to the commission and the chair stating a need for that.
So I think it would be helpful if you guys took a look at this before next meeting. I'll try to update it again for the next packet. But if there are particular things that you think we should include, take out, et cetera, I don't know exactly what you hoped. I'm sorry, I feel like we should have chatted more about this before the meeting.
No, that's okay. I do think it is something that the commission should actually go through and read through it. So please do that. It's not that long, really. I do think that we should have it in a form that could be finalized with notes at the next meeting. So maybe what we do is, if anyone between now and the next meeting notices that there's something in there that they'd like to provide a comment on or suggest a change or something, maybe go ahead and email me. That way I can kind of get it in there. Kevin and I can talk, he can make an update, and then we can kind of present to you at the February meeting like the final version kind of work plan. And you should think about it as far as, the commission has long-term goals, like what do we want to do within 5 years? But also, is there anything that you think that the commission can take on and just get done in a year or something like that?
Yeah. I will say you're hearing a little bit of frustration with me on this because there are things that the city staff has asked us to do. The city attorney said we needed to update our maps, for example. And during the pandemic, I went around to like all of the 4 of the districts and noted changes, put together a document. Because of lack of staff time, like we couldn't, I can give some guesses of what hey, this looks a lot different than it did before. This seems like it was noted as non-contributing and now looks to be contributing. They rebuilt the porch, they took off the siding, but the professional needs to look at that, right, and go out and do that. And so even when there are opportunities for us to like take on projects, it is limited by what the city government officials, the city administrators decide, and so I will say that but I do think that should not discourage us from finding things that we think are achievable and doable.
And I could make some suggestions. So when you're thinking about that and looking at it, yes, there should be some consideration on what is something that the individual members of the commission can do versus what would require, I don't know, me or other staff to be involved with. So think about that a little bit. But one of the things that I think as a professional in historic preservation is extremely important is having a sense of what you have as your building stock in your community. We have a long history of surveying, which is what we do when we go around and look at and write down notes about all the properties. We survey them. We have surveys in all of the north side, and we stop at the railroad tracks, so we don't go further south. So none of the area south of the railroad tracks has been surveyed.
The area along like Kirkwood.
Yes, like the
Yep.
Kirkwood neighborhood, that kind of neighborhood. We
The
also,
historic Hispanic neighborhood in
yes,
Oak Grove Park.
Manville Heights has been surveyed, so that's been done. But we also, generally in historic preservation, have a renewed interest in kind of that housing stock from the 40s, 50s, 60s time period, kind of getting into a change in building types. I mean, they're simply not built the same, generally. Some of the 40s are, but when you get into this mid-century type, we do have some neighborhoods of that. And now is the time when we want to go and look at that. Their surveys are done at different levels. You always start a survey with what we call a reconnaissance survey. And this is where we're just driving or walking around and doing it. We don't need to be skilled professionals to do it. We just need to be bodies and legs and hands
And
that
just
can
like-
write and eyes that can see.
Writing down like the date the house was built, what its
You'd
features
get just a
are.
little bit of training, and there would be some organization, and there's actually a specific form.
Okay.
And so that kind of thing, just kind of doing that lowest level reconnaissance survey to kind of have a better idea of what we have in housing stock, that's something that, individual commission members could do. Or you could group with a neighborhood association and do it. That doesn't require staff time. Now, staff time would help get you organized, train you a little bit, answer questions along the way, and then take the information from you and put it where it goes, which is generally at the state. But that type of project is something that you could take on if you find an interest in it, just because of the fact that it just takes individuals to do it. And I would just wanted to suggest it just because there are some areas that we really should. We get questions about a lot, and it'd be nice to know.
Yeah, my dad's dad, my grandfather, built a lot of houses in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and I've been kind of tracking the records of that he died in 77 before I was born, long since passed, but finding there are a bunch of new tools to be able to find some of that, and kind of researching the development of the area east of First Avenue and some of those developments, yeah, there's some really cool stuff. And I mean, there's great neighborhoods all over. I just,
Bel Air, that neighborhood.
yeah, just been thinking a lot about that era more recently and in that work as well.
This seems like kind of an existential historic preservation question, but what happens when the 90s are 50 years ago and some of the really not great stuff becomes under the,
Yeah, historic preservation just never ends. It always grows. And, you think about it, okay, there's houses from the 90s that you might be like, ugh. Well, chances are, over time, some of those actually will really be replaced.
Yeah.
Or they'll be updated, so they don't fit their time period anymore. So they're just not a historic property. But at the same time, I mean, we have names to describe some of these houses, and we just don't use them very much because we don't tend to look at those properties. But they can be kind of the most exciting. You might think, man, that, they're the shed roof ones where they're all, that's a style. And there are some historians who are actually, let's save them. So it just depends. You get to the point where it needs to be an exemplary example.
okay, I see.
You're not going to go to your average split level and be like, it would be one,
Well,
it might be a neighborhood.
A neighborhood, yeah. I think of that often. I mean, there were neighborhoods that looked a lot like the North Side. On the West Side, they're just gone. I mean, the area that is, the law school and the West Lawn and all of those. There was whole neighborhoods there that.
Well, up and down Burlington.
Yeah.
Homes.
But I think the idea of like finding over time, neighborhoods that are representative of those eras and those times.
Yeah.
Kind of get more so than maybe a particular.
Like
house, but there
the
could be.
Morningside neighborhood, a lot of it was built kind of in the 50s and 60s, and there might be some pockets. There could be a potential historic district there, but at the same time, it wouldn't be the entire neighborhood, because when you get to the level of a historic district, you're looking for a cohesive area. And so, if you have one that's been, remodeled poorly, maybe that's fine, you still have a district, but then when you start to get to the edge and there's a lot, then maybe that district ends there, So it's not that every house could potentially be listed on the National Register. It still needs to be special or somehow exemplary, or a cohesive neighborhood, because that's where houses could have more changes. We just don't know, because there's been so much. The surveys stopped. I don't know when the last one was done.
Well, we did the downtown district, I think.
Yeah, the downtown district is, I think, a little bit different. Because,
It is, but I think it's the
Yeah.
last similar type. We
Yeah.
haven't done a neighborhood.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a neighborhood survey
Not since I've been on
since
the
like
commission.
04,
Yeah.
something like that. It's been a long time. So, and we would need a grant or a professional to write maybe an intensive survey of a neighborhood or a property, write a National Register nomination. Those things we could use to move a property on. But we have to have the reconnaissance survey first. And we don't have to have a professional. We could. And in the past, we have. But we don't have to. We could have
Just how many,
skilled volunteers.
on average, how many grants did we used to apply to? I think it was I would say 2 to 4.
I actually don't know that. I do have a master list. Our record keeping over time has been not great, and so it's been a little difficult to keep track, but I do have a list of grants. What happened is when I first came here, we applied for 7 grants within the first few years, and we got all of them except for the very first one. And so that's what happened, is we used to have a discretionary fund. If we found the need to apply for a grant to study a property or whatever, we could do that. And about the time when I came here, the rules on that were changing, kind
The
of
rules
along with.
at the city level.
Yeah,
okay.
at the staff level. And so now we no longer have that. And so we would have to go through like a vetting process on a project in order to get a grant. And so we would need to know more about what we're doing. so.
Other thoughts while we're here, and then we can talk more about it next month as well.
So you do want us to review this work plan, and if we have feedback, to provide it. Do you want that ahead of the
Yeah.
next meeting?
I was going to probably, well, I will write something in advance of the next packet, which goes out on the 2nd
Of February?
of February, so I'll probably write something that week, if I'm being honest. So like in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so we're giving information, feedback before you do your rewrite.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you have, I mean, if it's like, if the feedback's like, I think we should put this above, you know what I mean? Like, but if you have like substantial changes, it would be great. to
Yeah,
have
I mean,
them.
if, you don't need to go through this and edit it or
No, I'm
something.
not
So
talking
don't
about
do
that.
that.
But if you've got
Read through
ideas,
it.
things that you've been thinking
Yes,
about
I
that we think we should include, even if it's just getting them on paper somewhere, I think is good. Even if it's it gets ambitious, there's changes happen, and maybe someone's like, maybe I win the Mega Millions tomorrow night. I'm like, all right, give me the plan, let's go, right?
Or even, if you think that there's a problem and there's some, we can solve a problem. There's that too. So just, if you have a suggestion, email me or Kevin or both of us or something, just so we can, it would be good to have a draft for the next meeting that can be approved. The annual report will be kind of done, and then you'll approve it. And anyone who has not been here for an annual report, and I can't really remember, I don't know, you'll get a little biographical sketch sheet that you have to fill out and sign from me as soon as I can remember to send it to you. And then I have to have it before I submit the annual report in the end of February.
It's real short.
Yeah, it's super
like,
short.
It's like a 5-minute task.
Yeah, but you do have
yeah.
to sign it.
New members, yeah.
Yeah, if you've filled one out already, then you don't do it again.
Yep.
So, yeah, and we will also, I have to figure out when, but we will present a form of the annual report, or I will, to council as well. I have to get going on that.
Yeah, they don't invite me to those things. I probably.
You could come along if you wanted.
Yeah. All right. Any other discussion on that before we move on? I think we'll have an opportunity, people can take a look at it, opportunity to visit it again in February. Sorry. The item F, certificates of chair and staff.
Now, since we didn't have a December meeting, I had to go back and remember some of these because they were so long ago. 422 Grant Street in the Longfellow Historic District, they had a deck approval back here, and when it was an old deck and they were building a new one, and when they removed it, they found that whoever built that deck did not put ledger flashing, and so all of the water went into the wall. This is the sill plate of the house. This is the sheathing. It's all rotten. So we approved to have them get that replaced, and then they'll build their new deck. 418 Brown Street. So this is 414, which is a local and National Register landmark. This is Gaslight Village. 418, 420, and 422, all on this one property. But anyway, this house here, which is clearly, it's not historic, it's built in the 60s, 70s. It is getting some new siding. This is all warped and weird, and this is, messed up. And so it'll match the lower level here. There it is on the map. Wait, there it is on the map. This belongs there. We had several staff reviews. This retaining wall was built, and they need to replace the steps already. It did not need review, but the steps do, so. This is 610 North Johnson Street. It's a rental house with these unfortunate railings. They replaced just these railings. They added pipe railings to the stairs. That was it. This one it's a case from the middle of 2021. This family bought this house, great, and they brought their solar panels with them. And they wanted to get them approved. We approve a layout, because where the solar panels go is important. And they could not find a contractor who would install the solar panels that they already owned. So it was a big struggle, and that's why it was a long wait. And they finally decided, they were originally, so this is the front of the house, like this portion is right here. And so there's a rear addition, and then there's a long garage. It has an office in it. They were going to install the solar panels originally here, which we can approve, but they just needed to decide that. And so over time, they've decided they're going to put them on the garage. I frankly don't know if they're going to get enough solar heat gain in order for that to work with this tree right here, but we approved them to be installed
That the
there.
house with that chapel right there, that little stone thing?
Oh, yeah, they do. The site inventory form for this property, they have a lot of these little concrete stone
Guy who did
put
back in the
together
60s
things.
60s was
Yeah.
kooky.
It was one of those things that was considered significant, even though at the time they decided it was significant, it wasn't even historic yet.
Right.
And now it's all falling apart. We don't regulate anything with all of the little follies in the yard. I mean, yes, we want them to keep them, but they're falling apart. So, yeah, it's a big yard.
Like little grottos or something?
Yeah,
Like
it's
grottos, and the
concrete
chapel was
with
like-
little.
It was like 5 by 8, and you could walk into this thing, and it's like,
If you were to email me, I could find the site inventory form and send it to you.
There's a 1997 Little Hawk article about them.
Oh, okay. On it.
I don't think those are dignified.
All right, I'll see what I can find.
This is Carl's house, and he had a steel door like we can't approve here, and he wanted to get it replaced, and so he's getting one that's kind of like this. It'll have 4 light windows in each of these panels. He also has a garage on the alley, and it's just going to get a flush panel steel door. So, this poor little house, I did some investigating because I was super confused. This was the open front porch, and it's been subsumed into the house, so that's why it looks so odd. So it'll probably never look like it originally did again, but oh well. It has a deck and a ramp, but then on the back of the house, it has an extensive 2-story deck, and all of that flooring is getting replaced on the 2-story deck in the back. This is a rental property that needed new stairs, and they didn't get it approved, and these are not right, so they are getting new stairs. What's not right about them, just in case you want to know, first of all, they have to have closed risers, and by code, all the risers need to be the same height, so you can't have the big step off at the bottom. We also don't want them to attach this board to the skirt board of the porch. We want them to actually extend from the porch pier to the porch pier, the full width. And then they should have a little toe kick, which is the little overhang on each side so that they look right. But
Stop pointing.
yeah. We wouldn't tell them to do that though. So anyway, these hopefully will be replaced sooner than later. This is an interesting case, and it is one of those where our guidelines allowed it, and it's fine, but in a way, it's a little problematic. This bungalow originally had asphalt shingles. It always did. They were probably red. And it will have a standing seam metal roof applied to it, which our guidelines specifically say to consider alternative roofing choices like standing seam metal roofs. And so it can be allowed. Historically, though, it would have been an asphalt shingle in a red color, which is unfortunate. We did work hard with the contractor to make sure, though, that it's the appropriate type of standing seam. That is a hard one for a lot of the roofing contractors because of the fact that all of the commercially, readily available standing seam roofs have ridges and striations in them to prevent them from doing what they call oil canning. It kind of pops. which happens when you have a metal that's too thin and it's smooth. And so to counteract that, you use a thicker gauge metal. And so it makes the roof a little bit more expensive, but it is a requirement. The reason it's a requirement is a few years ago, the National Register actually put out a statement saying that all of the agricultural style metal roofs that were going on, if that alone could prevent a property from being eligible for the National Register. And so we changed our guidelines to regulate roofs in historic districts or on landmark properties in order to prevent the agricultural style roofs. There are a few on Burlington Street that if you want to drive down there, that's a conservation district, and that's why they have been put in there. There's a house, for instance, at 415 Van Buren Street. It's in a conservation district, and it had a metal roof in a pretty good condition, but we don't regulate that. And so it's being replaced right now just because we don't regulate that. We had one intermediate review. If you might remember, we approved this garage for the house on Kirkwood, and they changed it slightly by changing the grade on one end of the garage, and that'll actually be on the the west side, or the
Side that
Keokuk,
faces-
is
yeah,
that
faces-
the Keokuk Street facing side will step down a little bit, and so that just made the this end a little bit taller. It was a minor change.
Any update on that old garage, or shed? Did they just completely tear that down?
They will be, because that's the location of the new garage.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I remember that.
But no, I don't know that they've started that project yet. I'm not sure.
All right, consideration of the minutes from the November 10th meeting. Do you have a motion to approve those?
Thoman, motions to approve the minutes for November 10th, 2022.
Second?
Beck, seconds?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes have passed. Commission information. Jessica, you had a couple things?
Yeah,
You want me to go
I
first, or do you want to-
do.
Do you want me to go, or do you want to go?
I've totally made a mess of my packet, so hold on.
Well, I'll go with, while you.
Go ahead.
So I, in December, was elected to join the National Association of Preservation Commissions Board, which is kind of cool. We had our first, I'm on the advocacy subcommittee, and we had our first meeting yesterday. So I feel like I have learned a lot in just that hour, which is very cool. And our first meeting is in March, so I'll be out at our first meeting. I can report back next time we see each other after that, so.
But you can continue serving in your role here.
Till June. My term is up in June. I've served, the council often doesn't appoint people to after 2 full terms, and I've served 2 full terms and a partial term, so it is unlikely that I would get reappointed if I'm going to, if I would reapply, and I'm not going
And
to.
he's not invited to meetings as it is, so.
What's that?
Not invited to meetings as it is.
Yeah, that's right. But a change is always good. Good to have fresh ideas and perspective, and I'm not, when my time is up on this commission, doesn't mean my time is up on preservation work in Iowa City, so.
Good.
Anyway, that was my one announcement that Jessica told me to announce. I kind of forgot.
Yeah.
Where are you going for your meeting in March?
It's in DC, which is
Lucky
convenient.
Nice.
Yeah.
I hear there's going to be a direct flight there starting
There
this summer.
is,
That's
yeah,
so
I know,
awesome.
I'm very excited.
From Cedar Rapids
Really?
to DC, yeah.
American
This
Airlines,
is a
yep.
huge deal.
Yeah.
I had one bit of sad news, and I couldn't get retrieval on the internet to work properly. So anyway, Thomas Baldridge
Oh, yeah.
passed away recently. He was a member of the commission from, I think, 2007 to 2014. He, at least then I know, was on the County Historic Preservation Commission in 2015 because I served on it at the same time and he was there. He was also one of the founding members of Friends of Historic Preservation. especially when, like, Old Brick was involved in all of that. And so I do believe that Friends is going to investigate the idea of naming an award after him.
Awesome.
Just wanted to
Not
point
the
that out.
award.
He was 92, and so he had a very nice, long life, and his obituary is in the Press Citizen, if you want to read it.
He was a classmate of my mother's at City High. They were
Your mother, who
Baldridge,
also
right?
served on the
Yes.
commission.
Okay. I'm gonna email.
I knew
Your
him
mother,
as a
who
young-
also served on the
I was a-
My
commission.
mother was also on the commission back in the 70s,
Yeah.
whenever it first started.
Very good. And I think that's it, because my other thing was like about the annual report.
Did you say he was the founder of
He was just a member
it, yeah.
of the founding
A
group.
founding member.
Yeah.
Okay.
He,
There was a couple that really led
he's
that.
not like named specifically, so.
All right, any other updates? Anyone? All right, I have motion to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Need one?
Wagner moves to adjourn.
Second?
Reynolds seconds the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.